Fortuna bold, Fortuna bold, O lucida, lucida sans, lucida italic. O Helvetica, Helvetica fin, Helvetica inserat Rome. Come to us now, O Guermantes, O Baskerville, O Verdun. As we venture forth into the terra incognita of the blank page, give our thoughts form, O Courier, O Calibri, O Times New Roman.
Thank you, Grand Scribe. Welcome to The Longest Night. HOCUS presents Stories of Darkness. HOCUS, the Hermetic Order of Clandestine Urban Scribes, is a quarterly reading series that operates in the guise of a secret society. We worship at the altar of the adjective, practice the sacraments of the synonym, and believe that the written word is eternal. Tonight, we have a slate of readings based around the theme of darkness. The only constant source of light for us these past few weeks has been the light of what HOCUS terms the glowing rectangles, those LCD windows into the world which have substituted for human contact for the last long 9 months. In order to banish the darkness and to reclaim our own light, we will begin tonight's program with an incantation.
O sun, which leadeth our lives, and which giveth light to field and forest, we pray that we might remember you, for we are too much before the glowing rectangles, bent in supplication, in non-ergonomic IKEA chairs.
We pray that we might remember privacy for the supervisors, the webinar leaders, and the distance learning educators would come into our homes. Once sacred spaces of unwashed dishes and heaped laundry, and ask probing questions about our mental and emotional well-being, heretofore the province of only a few friends, after plying us with beer.
We pray that they might see only our chosen backgrounds, taken from the Architectural Digest website and projected upon a green screen of construction paper. Thus shall our virtual aspirations stand in for our true accomplishments.
We pray that we might remember the downtrodden. We pray that tech support might help us to allow video for those who cannot see, to unmute the muted, and to have pity upon those who would misuse the chat function, for they are as dogs returning to their own vomit. So shall the fools pursue their own folly.
Help us to be the fourth to leave the call, and if not the fourth, the fifth. For the first to leave the call shall be talked about behind his back, and the last to leave the call shall be left alone, staring at her own reflection as in a mirror darkly. But the fourth leaveth in the midst of good cheer, before the awkwardness of multiple repeated goodbyes commences.
Lastly, we pray for humility, for we are each of but a square in the grid view, one block of many, beholden to our ill-chosen screen names. Supplicants and incanters of the Hermetic Order of Clandestine Urban Scribes, before you is our first reader, Jasmine Pettit, who is now ready to present her work to the Order. Jasmine Pettit, the floor is yours.
On November 8th, 1945, Joseph James D'Angelo Sr. and Kathleen Bassano welcomed a baby boy into their life, and using no imagination, named him Joseph James D'Angelo Jr. Little Joseph James grew up to play junior varsity baseball, got his GED in 1964, joined the U.S. Navy, and served for 22 months in Vietnam as a damage controlman. In 1970, he graduated with an associate's in police science with honors. He got a bachelor in criminal justice, did 32 weeks of police training, and became an officer in the burglary unit, eventually becoming in charge of the Joint Attack on Burglary Task Force in California. And who knows what makes people do things, right? How do we explain our motivations? He got married, had kids, got divorced, married again. He had trouble with women. He got arrested for shoplifting a hammer and dog repellent, a very suspicious combination, I think, in July of 1979. Went to jail, got fired, and did 6 months of probation. In 96, he was arrested for a vague incident at a gas station, but the charges were dismissed. He did odd jobs. He worked at a grocery store. He got old. And fear is complicated. There's so many different kinds. Fear of physical harm, fear of the unknown, big changes, commitment, fear of public speaking. When it's out of my control, like a dude walking too close behind me, parking garages, because, nothing good happens to women in parking garages, that sort of fear, that's no good. But the fear that I can control and curate, I sort of like it. Fear of new opportunities, skydiving, taking risks, that kind of thing. And all night, I'll watch a scary movie and sort of regret it, but sort of love it. And outside, I can imagine strange noises from the overgrown brush. I climb stairs, waiting for hands to reach up through the risers. I run back from the bathroom down the dark hallway and jump into bed so the monsters underneath don't have time to even notice me. And one night, I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and out of the corner of my eye, I see movement down the hallway, something quick and jerky, and I ignore it because I'm reasonable and I believe in things like that. But then the dog is facing down the hall, hair standing up, muscles tensed. I don't know, maybe it's nothing. Sometimes fear just finds you. And another time at 4 a.m., the dog is awake and hurtling off the bed towards the closed door, hair standing up and growling, this deep guttural situation with his paws scrabbling under the edge of the door. And I get up, certain there's someone in the house. And what are you supposed to do? Do you ignore it? I'm by myself. Do I go check? I don't have a baseball bat. That's what you're supposed to have according to the television. So I start putting on pants because if I'm going to be murdered, I want to wear pants for it. And I open the bedroom door and the dog just goes shooting down the stairs barking. And I creep my way down there with my fingers crossed to find nothing. Of course it was nothing. Just the dog chewing on a Frisbee. I stay awake on the couch for a while afterwards, my nerves weird and jangly. Sometimes fear just finds you. On April 14th, 1970, Thomas and Rita McNamara welcomed a little girl into their life and with slightly more creativity named her Michelle. Michelle grew up in Oak Park, Illinois and became the editor-in-chief of her school newspaper. She grew up, got a bachelor's in English and an MFA in creative writing and moved to LA in 1987 to write Scribes. In 2006, she launched TrueCrimeDiary.com. The website became very active with lots of people wanting to help track down criminals, but Michelle was always particularly interested in the death of Kathleen Lombardo and her murderer, who Michelle eventually started calling the Golden State Killer. The Golden State Killer was active from 1974 to 86 and was responsible for several crime sprees. This dude's main thing, if you don't know, is that he would wait around, learn a woman's schedule, strike when she's alone, and then get on with all the burglary, assault, murdery stuff. And Michelle McNamara's obsession resulted in a book deal. She's nearly done with the book when she passes away in her sleep on April 21st, 2016. Her husband, Patton Oswalt, makes sure the book is completed by her friends and is still published. The book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, comes out February 27th, 2018. And the book is dark. It piques whatever bizarre interest it is that some percentage of us have with shows like SVU and Criminal Minds and true crime podcasts. And at the end of the book, he's out there somewhere. She doesn't find him. But on April 23rd, 2018, I am home alone in the house for a week. So you can just picture me lying in bed and reading her book in the warm lamplight of my bedroom, and eventually I get tired and I need to take the dog out. We walk through the neighborhood with the trees casting strange shadows and the trains in the distance and the street lamps shining their rotten yellow circles and the usual number of feral cats hissing us from under parked cars. We reach the end of the road and turn back past the cats, the trees shivering, the trundling by of trains, the rotten lamplight. We get about halfway back, and some switch flips in my body, and fear finds me. And I become certain that there's going to be a burglar in my house when I get back. I never lock the doors while I'm out walking the dog, and while I don't actually think that the Golden State Killer is in my house, like this 70-year-old dude did not travel up from California to renew his hobby, brains that are full of fear don't work right, and you never know the motivations of evil men, and I am convinced. I'm convinced that there's someone watching my house and tracking my schedule. I'm convinced that they've noticed that my husband is out of town, what time I walk the dog, how long I'm normally gone, and I'm convinced that I'm going to get back to the house, and I'm going to go inside, and he's going to come for me. And this is no longer the fun, like, ooh, I watched a zombie movie fear. This is like full on, I can taste adrenaline in my mouth sort of fear, and I can hear my pulse in my ears, and all the while knowing, like, nothing is actually happening. Nothing is happening. That nothing bad is actually happening, and I can separate myself enough to know that I'm not being sensible. But the fear is there all the same. You don't know the motivations of the evil that exists. And so Fig the dog and I circle the block, shakily, and then using all the self-soothing powers I have, we approach the front door. My house looks so cozy with all the windows glowing and the light spilling out onto the lawn, so welcoming. So I get a little closer, and my mouth tastes like I'm sucking on pennies, and I get a little closer, and Fig the dog is real confused about why we're walking so slow, but he can tell I'm tense, so then he's getting weird. I get a little closer, and I'm walking up the stairs, and my hand is on the doorknob. My rational brain is saying many logical things about how everything is actually totally okay, while I'm looking over my shoulder constantly, and then I turn the doorknob, and I go inside, and I go upstairs, and I brush my teeth with my eyes glued to the stairs, and I check the closet, and then I go back to reading the book in bed by myself, like an idiot. And I finish it that night, and I don't catch him, and he just gets to get away with it. And I fall asleep listening to episodes of Criminal Minds because there is something clearly wrong with me. So on April 25th, which is 2 days later, I woke up to the news article that the Golden State Killer had been caught. Joseph James D'Angelo Jr., our hammer and dog repellent shoplifter from before, with all his police work and burglary skills, now red-faced, blotchy, and in his 70s, had been arrested for 13 murders, 50 assaults, and over 100 burglaries. They tracked him down because of some confusing thing about discarded DNA, which is a phrase that I do not like. They arrested him at his home, where he lived with his daughter. He came peacefully and apparently just said, I have a roast in the oven. And the cops agreed that they would take care of it. And that's when I started locking the door when I walked the dog. Because I like to be scared, but like not like that. That's what I'm supposed to say, right? Did I learn my lesson? Except I still don't lock the door. I think there's something wrong with me. I guess I'm just going to take my chances.
Hello. Paranormal antiquing. We were drawing magical chalk outlines around whole palettes of dusty maroon lamps, ornate desks, velvet cushions tinged with iridescence. Darkened rooms hummed with the charged air of escape artist exhibitions. The price tags were all invisible. A black long-haired cat named Sib, who was part skunk, hid amongst all the goods in the warehouse and would pop out by our feet like a moray eel when we were toting something fragile. When some ghost finally broke through the wall to claim the items, all the lights came on in the room where we were, and living people charged in saying, "Don't touch number 9." Quite a crowd would gather at these places, except when we were dragged alone into a totally black room by some mysterious force. Forget any chance of eavesdropping at your own funeral, checking people's names off in green ink as they come into the parlor. You never will know the hereafter well enough to write a travel brochure about it. Still, you have your own opinions about it all. You don't need madams on reality TV to sell you ectoplasm on layaway. This next poem is called Odasaga Apparition. The Odasaga is a hotel, a 4-star hotel where I worked in New York State. Over the winter time, the hotel would close for the winter, and I was the only person in the hotel overnights. Odasaga Apparition, 2009. The wide veranda facing the frozen lake pops and snaps in the pre-dawn sub-zero air, an immense sleeping dragon who shifts and ripples irritated wings. From the outside at night, the century-old hotel is an elaborate cake with half its candles blown out. My footsteps in the snow of the back lawn end where I must have just remembered something and turned back. The TV's on in room 213. No one's been in there for weeks. I creep into the periwinkle dark to turn it off. Ghosts must like C-SPAN, or at least lament they have no fingers to turn to something racier, something more embodied like reality TV, like Survivor. The elevator brakes while you're on it. It's 3 a.m. You can't radio for help. What then? That's why I take the stairs. Once I thought I saw a shade dart away on one of the glass-encased landings. I go all around the hotel, listening for noises. I don't know what I'm trying to detect. No one from the maintenance shop has ever been able to describe it to me. Outside, in the hotel parking lot, a crispy leaf scurried up a snowdrift and clung to a wrought iron fence. And with shadows for swords, the full moon and the orange street lamp fenced all night long. My shift ended. I stumbled out to my car in the lot, feeling the caffeine swell for the dream drive home, when something made me pause. I turned around just in time to witness a hot pink smear of winter sunrise appearing behind the western turret.
Flight into Egypt. The second verse from the 12th chapter of the book of Matthew reads, "And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road." And I swear to you, if you ever try to leave, you know what will happen. You don't need to talk to people at work. Just do your job. You need to talk? You can talk to me. She could not nod with the gun to her head. Blinking was the best she could do. The small red circle stamped on her temple where the metal pressed flesh was still there when she went to bed. She tried to tell herself that this was not Hayter. The sober quiet of his voice, like he was talking to a spooked horse, made her shiver. She thought of the times he lay on the sofa with his curly blonde head in her lap. This was the man she loved. The one who brought her coffee in bed, told her she was beautiful in sweatpants. The one who begged her to be the mother of his children. The man who cried pitifully and promised again and again to treat her right. Hayter had promised her the stars when she was 16, and now she found herself trapped in his gravitational pull, orbiting a bleak and brutal planet. After the miscarriage and the terrible day Hayter had kicked their little dog to death in a fit of jealousy, she had gone to Planned Parenthood for an IUD. She knew he would beat her within an inch of her life if he ever found pills. He snooped everywhere, knew everything. It was too risky. She let him think they were just slow, that it would happen eventually. Graveyard at the warehouse was her escape. Hader dropped her off while the rest of Seattle slept and picked her up in the morning. Lately, it had seemed as if the sun had died, like she was living her life as a drowned thing beneath dark water. She welcomed the buzzing brightness that awaited her. Out on the floor with her scanner, it was only a matter of time until Bonnie found her. Busybody Bonnie with blue hair, who liked to read her horoscope for the day out loud. It seemed to her that Bonnie lived her entire life at full volume, the knob turned all the way up. It was a kind of freedom Corey admired, like diamonds or jewels, flashy and beyond her reach. Bending over early in her shift to pull items from some bin or other to fulfill an order, a dog toy, a toothbrush, a tin of mints, her shirt had ridden up to expose the patchwork of weeping red welts and old purple bruises on her bare back. She heard Bonnie gasp behind her. "Oh my God, Corey, what the hell happened to you?" It took her a minute to realize what Bonnie was asking about. The day before, Hader had ripped her from a dead sleep in a blind rage, screaming about the bananas she had brought home from the store. Too ripe. He liked them nearly green, and she had been in a hurry, careless, stupid. She tried to go somewhere else in her mind while he used the piece of cut-off vacuum cleaner cord on her back as she lay face down on their bed. Usually this worked. But this time, all she could think of was how mad she was at herself for buying ripe bananas, and how pissed she was still all these years later about him ruining their good vacuum cleaner. A Kirby, expensive. They couldn't afford another one. She kept the useless machine all this time, hoping someday to have that cord replaced. She did not know what to say. Hader had always been careful to use places that would not show, and she had not prepared an excuse. She shrugged, mumbled something about slipping on her front steps. Bonnie was quiet for once. But the side eye she gave Corey for the rest of their shift told her that Bonnie was not a believer. She knew. She revealed her own scars to Corey as they took their meal break. Bonnie's cigarette smoke mingled with the fog of the chilly night. The stunted maples, trapped in their squares of parking lot like prisoners, were nearly bare, as Bonnie explained her own escape, how Corey could escape too. The small steps Corey took away from Hader needed to be invisible. She opened a bank account for the cash she had saved for years from the grocery money. She did research on a library computer. She took documents from the blue plastic file box Hader kept for bills and important papers to copy on the machine at work, one at a time. She concealed some article, a shirt or a pair of underwear, in the bottom of her lunch bag to slowly fill the suitcase Bonnie kept for her. The passport went to Bonnie's address, and Corey stared at it in wonder when Bonnie brought it to her. She had never dreamed of having one. Most importantly, Hader did not have one. She could not bring herself to tell Bonnie she had never even been on an airplane, not once, in all her 26 years. The worn contours of her tiny world shamed her silent. She reminded herself that Hader could not follow her when she thought of the pink plus sign she had discovered in the employee bathroom. A miraculous failure. The horror, the wonder of it took her breath away. Hader would never know that his dream would be a reality. Excuse me. Her decision to keep it would never be his gift. The tunnel she had been digging was almost ready. She would have one chance to pass through, to disappear and emerge to a new life that only she could have. In the end, it was so well planned that it felt less like escaping with her life and more like something she was always meant to do. The people from the organization in Toronto assured her that she had what she needed. Hader drove her to work like always. She had a picture from their wedding album in her purse to remember, but she wouldn't look at it for a long time. First, she had to make him fade away. She kissed him for what felt like the first and last time, tasting her old life and something new she could not name. All that was left was the leaving. She left the phone Hader had given her in the trash can, next to the picnic tables outside where they all took their breaks in good weather. She imagined it ringing uselessly as the sun came up on the parking lot. Hader seething in his black Chevy Super Duty. How long would he wait? Christmas was days away, and Corey shared her favorite part of the story with Bonnie in the car. Not the manger or the baby or the angels, the things everyone knew. The part she liked came after, when the girl and her baby become refugees on a warning from some fortune-telling librarians and narrowly escape the evil king and his baby-killing ways. Bonnie told her it sounded like a bad movie. Bonnie, with her streaky blue and gray hair and nose ring and black fingernail polish, who believed in tarot and astrological signs, assured Corey the stars were aligned in her favor. Bonnie hugged the breath out of her one last time and left her at the curb with her suitcase. Call me when you get there. Bonnie had talked of the solstice in the car, how darkness would never be longer than this night, how it was now that they could begin their long, slow climb back into the light. The airport itself seemed to her a wonderland of light and color and sound, even at 6 a.m. She showed her passport, went through security, took her shoes off, and dumped things in plastic bins. She stood where she was told to stand and raised her arms to heaven. She bought muddy coffee and 2 magazines and sat at the gate, not drinking or reading, clenching her teeth to stop them chattering. Something fluttered, and she froze, pressed her hand to it, and knew that she was not alone. She understood how death could mean life, and as she resurrected yet again her own resolve. It was morning, the natural light flooding in the wall of windows. She wondered how she had missed the sunrise. She looked at her airplane, the umbilical that joined it to the door. The attendant scanned her ticket and smiled as she stepped into the brightly lit tunnel, and she passed through as any other traveler to a foreign land.
Good evening. We just want to tell you a little bit about HOCUS. We have some announcements. We want to talk about some of our readers and how you can find them. But the first thing we want to do is we have an interactive renunciation of the year 2020 at the end of our service tonight. And we want you to think of the things you hate the most about 2020 that you will be happy to see go. And you can chat those into the comments. But before we do that, we can also practice commenting right now. We have some prizes to give away. And we're going to give some prizes away at to the first people who can. We have some HOCUS swag, and we have some Telltale PDX swag. Telltale is a wonderful, fun, diverse community-based monthly live event hosted and curated by our first reader, Jasmine Pettit. And their website is telltalepdx.com. And she's offering us a shirt, sunglasses, koozie, leftover Halloween candy, buttons, and stickers. So those will be great. The question is, and you can guess if you want to guess at this, the question is, in what color ink did Lewis Carroll, the author of Alice in Wonderland, in what color ink did he prefer to write? Okay, so the first people to chat, text, send us an Instagram message or a Facebook message. We're all our social media. We're at HOCUS Readings. Okay, the first people to get us those will win our prizes. We've got some HOCUS swag. We've got some Telltale swag. Okay, the next thing I wanted to do is I wanted to say that HOCUS.inc, www.hocus.inc is also home to our store. We have a store now because it's a good way to keep our mission going. We have shirts and mugs, and we have a phone case, and we have a tote bag, all those sorts of things. Those help keep our mission going. Blue is a guess. No, blue is not it. We're also having a workshop at the end of January. January 27th, we have a workshop. It's a tarot-led short story writing workshop. Good guess, Red? Nope, that's not it either. We have a short story writing workshop on January 27th. It's $15. It's 2 hours. We guide you through writing a short story using tarot cards. Everybody who's done it has loved it and really been happy with the draft that they came out with. So you can sign up for that at our workshop as well. I wanted to mention that we have, you can find more of Jesse Hilson's work and all of his links through his Twitter or Instagram feeds at Platelet60. Platelet, like that's like the thing that's in your blood. And Platelet60. Okay. We've also got, you can find more of Howard W. Robertson's work that you haven't seen yet at www.howardwrobertson.com. Steve Deniston, who is going to be our final reader tonight. You can find him at his Twitter handle at Steve Deniston. He's also included in the Forest Avenue Press anthology, The Night and the Rain and the River, which is still available on Amazon. And I also wanted to say that 2 of our past readers currently have books out. W.H. Cameron's book, Crossroads, and Joanna Rose's book, A Small Crowd of Strangers, are both available at Powell's, Broadway Books, and Annie Bloom's. Our grand editor, Eric Arneson, podcasts, teaches workshops, and blogs at www.arnemancy.com. And lastly, our esteemed grand metricist, Lyndall Fraser Cairns, has a poetry chapbook called Planet-ish, in which she charts Pluto's demotion from planet, along the way exploring love, loss, womanhood, and the ties that bind us, gravitational and otherwise. And I think I put a link in there, but I don't have it in my words. I'll make sure it's up on the website, which again is www.hocus.inc. And now we're going to go ahead and go to a couple more readers. Sepia. No, it's not sepia, Amber. Amber, chat is perfectly fine.
Dust. In maybe just a few more years, I'll be but dust. The psalm still says our days are few and brief, like grass, like flowers, blown by wind and gone forever. Now tonight, I sit here by myself, remembering, imagining, as if the end is far away. I know it isn't. Strange to picture that, to see my ashes in an urn, yet not to see them, to be gone. I know the only question, but the answers are uncertain. I'm so grateful that I'm still in love with you. I feel the night now, dark and deep. I confess. One night, I went out shooting at the stars. Yes, literally shooting at the stars in Colorado, on a mountain trail just north of El Dorado Springs. Inebriate of Liebfrau milk and Coors was I, and only 24. The stars spread out in shining plenitude across the high, black, Rocky Mountain sky. I carried a deer rifle I brought from Oregon, a 30-30 that I'd used at Grandpa's cabin in the Coast Range. I took aim at old Orion's belt and fired a couple times. "Para, brat, para," I cried, quoting what the eagle cried in Pushkin's poem about the prisoner. "It's time, brother, it's time." I felt connected to the universe authentically in an eternal moment. Though I'm old now and ironical and sober, I believe I was in some quixotic way, in that insane romantic gesture, permanently baptized in the cosmic truth of spiritual beauty. I recall so well how dark the trail, how bright the night.
This is my short story, Burnt Sulfur and Damp Wood. I called my friend Grace and convinced her to drive with me to the coast for New Year's Eve. The plan was we'd put our feet in the ocean at midnight. She brought her boyfriend, and I would have brought someone too, but it would have been too much like a double date. I didn't have anyone to bring to something like this. When we got there, clouds covered the sky, and we were far enough from town, the lights were only dots. It was so dark, we could only hear the ocean. We couldn't see it. I brought wood for a fire, but the wind blew so hard it wouldn't light. We finally dug a hole in the sand and made a fire pit, and that worked. Grace, Jim, and I sat around one side of the makeshift pit and faced the ocean, which we still couldn't see, even with the light from the fire. "What time is it?" Jim asked. Even with the fire going, I couldn't stop shivering. It was likely none of us would even get near the water. I took my phone out of my pocket, dropped it in the sand, and cursed. "Careful," Grace said. "Don't scratch the screen." I stopped wiping it on my jeans and used my sleeve. After all that, the battery was dead anyway. "Oh well," Jim said. The car pulled up in the parking lot, and above us, the headlights shone over where we were huddled together. Bits of fog we couldn't see drifted past us in small patches. I said, "Don't chase the water dogs." The car backed up and drove away, and we were left with our small patch of light from the fire again. "Water dogs," Grace said. I told them about fighting forest fires right out of high school. How, one time, after a bad lightning storm, my crew spent an hour hiking up and down a ridge, chasing bits of smoke we could see, but we couldn't find a source. One of the feds in charge found us, and we told him about trying to find where the smoke was coming from. He looked around with probably 20 years of condescending experience and said, "You're chasing water dogs. Patches of cloud, steam as everything heats up again. Don't chase the water dogs." Jim said, "Sounds like advice from a life coach that almost makes sense. I like it." "They were will-o'-the-wisps," Grace said. "Fairies that lead you astray." Now there was a light mist that was almost rain, only it seemed to appear on us instead of fall from the sky. I tucked my hands in my pockets to get them warm. Jim threw the last piece of wood on the fire. "This year," Grace said, "was a son of a bitch." Jim reached in his coat pocket and pulled out a box of sparklers. "I thought we could light these at midnight while standing in the water." He leaned across Grace and handed one to me. What do you think, Brian? Maybe just do it here and be done." Grace took one too. She sniffed, and I leaned away to look at her better. A tear ran down her cheek. She kissed the sparkler with a feather touch of her lips and said, "For Aunt Charlotte," and threw it in the fire. Her aunt had passed away a few months ago. Nothing happened for a moment. Then the whole sparkler flared at once, and we were overexposed in its sharp light. The smell of burnt sulfur mixed with the smell of damp wood burning. I threw my sparkler in. For Darren. His was suicide in the river. Jim threw his next to mine and said, "For his whole family, that really messed them up." He handed us more sparklers. For Thomas and his dad, who doesn't recognize him anymore. For Marcy, no one should get cancer in their 30s. For Terry, struggling to quit drinking. For so many more, we kept going until the box was empty, and Jim threw that in the fire too and said, "For every poor schmuck that lost his job this year." That included Jim, too. The last of the sparklers went out, and the box curled up on itself, burning up. For a moment, at least, the rain stopped. Grace said, "Look," and pointed towards town. Fireworks. A single firework shot into the sky and drifted down over the town, bright red and trailing smoke. "Not a firework," Jim said. "Emergency flare," Grace said, "the kind on ships." Another one shot up, and then another, and we couldn't count them all. They rose up from all over town, people celebrating the new year with emergency flares. "Must be midnight," I said. Jim said, "It's like everybody's asking for help," and laughed, maybe at his joke or because emergency flares were wrapping up the year. Both thoughts were equally dark, and his laughter only made it darker, which amused me enough to laugh too. "Here's the only help we came up with tonight," Grace said, looking toward the town like she was talking to everyone living there. "Don't chase the water dogs." She was crying again. "It's okay. I'm okay." Jim wiped at her tears. "What are those for?" "I don't know." "Because," I said, "last year was a son of a bitch." Minutes later, only a few flares went up, and then it was all done. Jim said, "Happy New Year," and reached across Grace to pull us both into a hug. "Let's get some coffee. Let's get warmed up." We walked to Grace's car, huddled together.
Supplicants and incanters of the order, HOCUS Grand Metricist Lyndall Fraser Cairns will now present our final ceremony of the evening, the renunciation of 2020. It's been a bad year for all of us, so we're writing a breakup letter, and we're inviting everyone watching to use the chat function on your glowing rectangles to send us the things about 2020 that you're happy to say goodbye to, and we'll toss them into the fire for you.
Dear 2020, our feelings for you are so intense it scares us. Because of that,
we reject you.
We reject you.
We reject you.
Look, 2020, we really just need some space to be alone with our thoughts. We need to work on ourselves. Because of that,
we reject you.
We reject you.
We reject you.
2020, we've met someone new. What does it matter what their name is? Okay, if you insist, it's 2021. We haven't met yet, but we have really strong feelings for one another. And because of that,
we reject you.
We reject you.
We reject you.
2020, you're flaky, unpredictable, and a little bit dangerous. We reject your murder hornets, your pandemic, your climate change deniers, your internalized body shame, your racial inequities. We reject your lack of empathy, your unemployment, your fire tornadoes, your toilet roll riots, whatever the baby peanut is, anti-vaxxers, overcrowded ICUs, the city on fire, anger and disgust at the maskless masses, losing Alex Trebek, a whole year without going to the movies. So 2020, we'll say it one more time, and everyone at home can say it with us.
We reject you.
We reject you.
We reject you. Supplicants and incanters of the Hermetic Order of Clandestine Urban Scribes, may your pens always overflow with words. May your notebooks always have a few more pages left. and may your deadlines always be safely in the future. This service is ended.